everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We are so excited that you could be a part of this conference session. Today we're going to be talking about technologies for healthy remote work. I am so thrilled to be joined by two esteemed panelists today. We have Bryant sitting directly to my left. Ian is the Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships for CEDIA. Ian is an industry veteran since 1998 who has worked in live sound and stage, residential and commercial, corporate, government, higher education technology integration. And for the majority of his career, his focus was integration control systems, UI, design, system design, and consulting. And then I'm also joined by Michael Donham. Michael is the president of RePure. He co-founded RePure, formerly Pure 365, a leading supplier of best-in-class health and wellness solutions for residential applications available through professional installers. So thank you both for joining me today. My name is Melissa Matalon. I'm Senior Director of Member Programs at the Consumer Technology Association. We have a number of member groups, including a smart home division. So for anybody who is a CTA member in the audience, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, please find me afterwards. I'd be happy to chat with you about opportunities to get involved. And if you're not a member, we can talk about that too. So let's get into it. I'd love to hear a little bit more from each of you about your organizations and what you do and how it relates to smart home and healthy practices. So Ian, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at CEDIA. CEDIA is the global trade association for companies that design, engineer, manufacture, and integrate technology in the home. I try to explain that in layman's terms as the professional community that installs, designs, and brings together the smart home. And we have roughly over 3,800 member companies in over 77 countries. And my job there is to build relationships as we try to expand further, being more consumer-faced and working with other trades and industries.
Awesome. And Michael, tell us about RePure. What is RePure?
So first of all, thank you for joining us, all of you. It's good to see all of you here. RePure, I've started out in the smart home industry maybe about a decade ago. And at that time, it was really the major categories were, energy efficiency, security and safety, and entertainment, networking, things like that. And healthy home or wellness technology wasn't really relevant at that time. So it's taken a long time over the past decade, but I come from an environmental inspection background. So as I started in the smart home industry, I thought it was really crucial to start implementing wellness technology, help people live healthier where they're living and working. And so what we try to aim to do within the smart home space is to give service providers like custom installers, smart home providers, to be able to implement wellness technology, indoor air quality, water quality, circadian lighting into their projects. And in the end, you can only manage what you can measure. So it's about putting certain sensors in, taking that data and making sure the space is being optimized for human health. That's pretty much where we're at, and there's been a lot of gains over the past decade, so it's a very exciting time.
Yes, and wellness in the home is, I think, on everyone's mind more than ever. And we're here today to talk specifically about remote work. Things have changed drastically over the last 2 years, obviously, given what's happened with the virus. People are spending more time at home. They're spending more money on, upgrading their home. Where do you see this smart home technology really helping to further these work from home practices? I'll start with you, Ian.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're definitely in unprecedented times. What I think was really shocking for a lot of people that have never worked from home is that disconnect that they normally had going to an office and then coming back home, being in your home all the time, and starting to notice things that you didn't really see before because you're spending so much time there, or having to work in rooms that you were not meant to be workplaces. And so it was a big shock for a lot of people. And some of the trends that we're starting to see take place, especially for those that are continuing to work from home, are the rebuilding of their infrastructure. A lot of people did not realize how old their back-end infrastructure, being mainly their networks or their security systems were. And so lots of upgrades going there. And then additionally, when it comes to being in kind of in that healthier space, looking at your lighting and having different circadian rhythm tracking, human-centric lighting, and then going further into the indoor air quality and water quality.
And Michael, what are your thoughts on that?
So when we talk about residential and you look into the several segments, right? There's the builder segment, there's the technology smart home side of things, there's the sustainability aspect. But if you look at all the surveys and the research that's being done in terms of consumer demand, it was already rising on the upward trajectory pre-COVID, but when COVID hit, it just like skyrocketed, right? So if you look at builders and you look at the top 10, 20 websites, you'll see that they all have wellness sections in them. And in particular, the major drivers are like what Ian said, lighting. But the two major drivers that we're seeing are air and water quality. So really in our industry, like I mentioned before, you can only manage what you can measure. So with our ecosystems that are on the market, it's about measuring and then remediating any possible pollution events.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like you said, the shift has it's risen dramatically. So, and you noted consumers didn't even realize until they were forced to work in some of their home environments what they might need. But also, I think consumers don't really know what they don't know. So how do you educate consumers about what options, what technologies, what products, or what they should be thinking about as far as wellness solutions in the home?
I know from the integrator channel, we stress a lot on that client discovery, the conversations with your client, figuring out not what they think that they need, but what would actually help them be more healthy in the home or be more happy in the home. And you can really only find that through really good client discovery conversations. From a manufacturing perspective, I think it's finding what really resonates with people in the home and their working environment. So finding that message that really can resonate and take hold. Education. I mean, you could have a budget for marketing, millions and millions of dollars, and it may not hit at home. But it's that personalization of finding out what they really need to be more comfortable in their home that I think is the best way.
I think it really has to be a top-down, so starting from manufacturers and entities like us that are B2B2C, because we're living it every day, we really need to educate the people that are downstream, people that have clients that they're serving. So I'll give you an example. When I was actually serving the end user several years ago, we would do radon monitoring and testing, and when we found that it's off the chart, so just layman's terms, if you're at 8 picocuries per liter, it's like smoking 20 cigarettes a day. Yet it's invisible, so people, they don't know. But when you educate them and show them, oh, your levels are really high, if you implement this type of mitigation, it's going to go down, and there's a monitoring system. And then when you actually help them and guide them through it, they're so thankful because there's so many people. It's the leading cause of environmental lung cancer. In the US, like over 20,000 people die per year. So you're actually helping that family prevent a health crisis. And so it's the same thing. Service providers, manufacturers, it's the same thing when we go onto the show floor. We don't know what we don't know, but when we start talking to them, we learn, and then the things that resonate, we're able to talk to other people about it.
Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of a ambassador program going on within as well, where people are championing some of the things that they're saying. What are the barriers, do you think, for some of these consumers, or that exist for companies to be able to connect to the consumers and help them understand?
Barriers? There's a lot of barriers. Because when you talk about healthy home, most of the environmental factors are invisible, right? Mm-hmm. If you talk about human health too, like our diet, our sleep, our exercise are so crucial, But now we're seeing like the Apple Watches, the Fitbits that are being able to quantify those things. So at least you know, like yesterday I walked 17,000 steps. I was like, whoa, that's why my feet are so sore, right? But the studies show, and constantly the medical community says you should walk 3,000 steps a day. So I was like, if I go to CES every month, I'm going to be in really good shape, right? So it's the same thing with air quality and water quality. It's like even here, we should have put a monitor here, right? So then we could tell everybody our CO2 levels are out of range. It's the same thing we talked about before, work at home, study at home. Students can only reach their peak potential when the environment allows them to do it. So CO2 levels, brain cognition. So when we have all of these metrics in place, we can better optimize the space for health.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing some barriers with accessibility. And I know that's something that Michael's working on. When I mean accessibility as affordability for all, we've got to get to a point especially when we talk about a healthy home environment, to make it accessible for everyone at all different levels of income. And then additionally, it is just knowledge. What we were asked earlier is I think there's still a lot of people that don't realize that there is an entire separate area of technology that is specific to make their home a healthier environment. So spreading that through the B2B2C is one of the best ways.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really important. So a lot of things that we're talking about require connectivity. And we know that there are gaps as far as broadband access in rural areas, low-income neighborhoods. What do we do to address that? And are there things that are already happening in the industry that are trying to help remedy? And what can others do to help support?
I know one of the areas that I believe would be really impactful is to work directly with the builder community, the design and build community. Once they have buy-in, and I'll let Michael speak to this in a minute, but once they have that buy-in and that understanding that it is a key part of the infrastructure of a home, that also when their homes will sell faster, they'll get more rental properties out there, but also they're going to have a happier and healthier client and customer. That will make a huge impact and a very big difference. I know Michael has some extra thoughts on that.
Yeah. So when we track the growth of smart home over the last 5 years, and then we take wellness technology and the trends, consumer trends with that, and you overlay it, it's amazing. It's almost the same pattern that we see. And I think this year we're going to see a lot of convergence with that. But sorry, can you?
The getting access.
Access.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But what I wanted to say was, with smart home, it really started with the upper middle class. Like just an example was the Nest thermostat, $250. Not many households in America could afford it. But as adoption started to happen, now we see a $129 Nest thermostat. And then now we see Amazon thermostat that are like in the 50s. And that's causing more mass adoption. And we're not there yet with health and wellness technology, but we are certainly seeing that similar pattern. Just to give you an example, most air quality monitors were in the $200-300 range, consumer grade. But just last month, Amazon came out with like a $50-60 air quality monitor. IKEA came out with one. So it's a very, very similar pattern. So first thing to really be able to expand accessibility is affordability. And then really to amplify the impact of those devices to create optimal health zones or environments is that integration with wellness technology into the smart home itself.
Yeah, and thinking about different ways that this technology can be used too. I know we're talking mostly about remote work, which I think almost all of us have experienced in the last couple of years. I think there's other use cases. You had mentioned before, education. A lot of children were virtual learning. I know even, I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. There was a snowstorm on Monday. Most kids have been out of school for the week, and a lot of school districts have opted to, use virtual learning as a backup. Are there additional use cases or ways that companies should be thinking about marketing these products or even for consumer use in the home beyond just remote work? I mean, I would think just general wellness would be one, but what are your thoughts on that? Michael, I'll start with you.
So it expands way beyond the home and working from home. So healthcare side, especially on the commercial side, there's what LEED is to sustainability. Now there's a well building standard, there's a fit well standard. So it's almost like certifying buildings for health and wellness. So when you have that certification logo or emblem on your building, people are a lot more comfortable walking in there because they know that the landlord or the building management company has done something to provide more safety and security. There's talk of some of those certification bodies bringing it down to the residential level. I speak to a lot of healthcare architects in the hospital who are designing hospitals, and they too want to implement wellness technology integrated into their backnet systems, so that if someone's walking into the building, you just click a QR code and you can have a dashboard of all the air quality metrics where you are, providing that peace of mind. And if we talk about remote working, the latest stats are there's a considerable amount, I last read 30 to 40%, that are not going to go full-time back into the office, right? So how do businesses kind of straddle that challenge and try to get more people in if it's more conducive to their business? You really have to make the space safe and healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I was going to follow up on that and say, is there a place for employers to think about using, a lot of what you talked about has measurements, data. Is there a space for employers to be able to use this data and potentially even payers or providers at some point?
I think so, though it gets me a little nervous, and it's a topic that Michael and I have talked about. When you start to collect data of an environment in the home, who can see that data? What can they do with it? Are there repercussions from it? Maybe from your employer or even your insurance company. If you're living in a home that has poor air circulation, they may raise your rates because of the repercussions of that. So it does get me a little nervous of that, but I think that there could be some definite great use cases that are less invasive for employers to help. Maybe instead of not tracking how well the home is or how well but more how productive the employer or the employee is in making that better. And I wanted to touch on the education side of it, of what you said. I've seen a lot of amazing technology, even some that's out on the floor, but some great ideas that are coming out. I wanted to reference one is Cable Labs and Forefront have some really amazing innovative videos of what they think the live, play, work, and learn from home will look like in the future. And that interactive, engaging way, and I know employers are trying to figure out how to be more engaging, where you can do thought sessions that normally would have been in person and virtually, and the same with younger people learning and the higher education. How can we develop and we can get some technology that allows for that one-on-one interaction with other people to get the creative thought process going? But we're moving in the right direction for sure. Yeah, and you touched on this, and I meant to bring this up at the beginning, but I think you have a unique perspective. Mm-hmm. So Ian has been remotely working from an RV across the year or so? 14 months. 14 months. So I think he brings a great expertise as to remote work healthy practices, but even you were commenting about how some of it just is to disconnect, go outside for a little bit, have some outdoor activity, but that you've seen some really cool stuff at the show too that has, it doesn't necessarily mean stepping outside, but things that will either remind you or keep you mindful of some of that balance that people need. Yeah, I mean, my personal way to ground myself and to reset is to get out. I mean, obviously, I'm dressed like I'm from out of an REI magazine because that's what I do on the weekends. I go out and get into nature and I hike and I spend time with my dog. But other people may not be outdoorsy type of person, and there is some amazing technology out there for mental health to help you disconnect with using technology. To guided meditation. And what we've seen this year that I thought was so amazing is there's some companies that are creating tools to measure your basically like little EKG monitors and measure your brain waves to see how well your meditation is performing and help you get better at it. That's where technology is making some really groundbreaking changes.
That's really interesting. It's awesome to see. We have a couple more things to talk about. Before we do, I just want to make note, we do have 2 microphones in the room. So if you do have questions for the panelists, we are open to Q&A. You can step up at any time, and we will answer those for you. Let's talk about some of the cool new technologies. I think you're seeing a lot of trends in the residential, commercial space. I think you're obviously seeing a lot of trends with your products. What do you think some of the cool new technologies are going to be, especially on the wellness side, that are going to be implemented in the home?
So I like to give an analogy. So most of us will have cars. Everything's moving electric, but probably most of us have gas powered still. So imagine if we don't have a gas gauge, right? We don't know when it's empty, and then we keep driving and it goes empty. Or we put diesel in the tank instead of what it's supposed to be. Things are going to start breaking, right? So that's the analogy with environmental wellness. We got to get trackers for chemicals in the air, carbon dioxide levels, particulate. All of these things the science tells us are damaging to our health, and we have to be able to use it. So everything's been kind of done disparately up until now, but now is the moment this year, I think, really where everything is put together, where those things will mimic kind of like what the human body does. Like if a COVID virus particle comes into our mucous membrane, immune system will send the killer T cells to attack them. And if our immune system is not strong enough, that's when they the spikes latch onto our cells and they replicate, and we get COVID. So in a home environment, it's an extension that has a huge impact on our health. We want to be able to regulate and automate and optimize as much as possible. I think that's the biggest kind of trend that's going to happen this year. That's going to allow people to have more peace of mind, whether it's your home or family. And then beyond that, like I was down on the floor, there's just so much like that parallel these things. Most of the stuff is all tracking, right? You get the data, and it's interesting what the privacy issues will be. But one of the other sessions I heard a couple of days ago with Smart Home, one of the panelists was saying, we gotta allow the user to opt in. It can't be automatically that we're getting their data. They have to opt in to be able to share their data, but in return, they have to understand what the benefits they're getting in to kind of get them to opt in, right?
Sure.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, on the privacy aspect, tracking measurements and sensors and keeping track of that data, there are obviously, especially with any health and wellness solutions, HIPAA has a protection level. But for the rest of them, do you hear from consumers who are concerned about, well, where does my data go, and what are you using it for, and where's it going, and what is your solution? How are you communicating to them to make them feel comfortable?
So we've been doing this many, many years. Not a lot of people are concerned about their air quality data being shared. It's just, we haven't had many, but I think as it becomes more and more prevalent, of course, there are going to be people who ask more and more of these questions, which is why I like the idea of that previous panelist I mentioned, giving them the opt-in ability.
Any thoughts on that, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about health tracking, a lot of that, your wearables that are tracking your personal health data is protected by HIPAA, and you have to give that data out. But we are really entering into a new world when we talk about the mass sensorization of the home. And not just the health and wellness side of it, of tracking your air and water quality and light, but all of your data. And, new Wi-Fi 6 capabilities allow for figuring out where you are in your home. Some other technologies are monitoring your gait as you walk through your house, your location, where is all that data going, who's getting access to it. We project that there may be some sort of a data concierge or being able to put it all into using like data encryption or blockchain technology to secure your data, and then pick and choose who you want to share it with, and possibly even sell that data to manufacturers that want to have more information about it. It's definitely something that is changing every single day, but everyone's keeping a very close eye on it.
Yeah, and Michael, you mentioned that not a lot of consumers have seemed too concerned with where their data is going related to
With the environmental.
with the environmental. However, I'm curious about interoperability aspects. You know, that's probably one of the number one challenges for most consumers now when implementing different smart home devices, especially as they add on wellness solutions. How important is interoperability, and what do we do? How do we help them?
So that interoperability is essential when it comes to mimicking how the human body works, right? And the reason why it's essential is because you don't have one manufacturer or brand doing everything, air quality, water quality. So that's kind of what our mission is. It's really to put everything together. Right now it's limited to cloud API integration and infrastructure, but with Matter, hopefully like later on this year, things seem to be kind of building momentum. Some people think it's going to take another few years, but those things are all going to help because one company is not going to have everything, right? And so we need that interoperability to create a holistic, healthy home environment, both for not only for personal health, but environmental health.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure CEDIA has some thoughts on this.
Oh yeah, the CI integration channel, we've been focusing on connectivity and making what we like to call the connected home. And interoperability has been our main focus for decades. Using control systems has been our number one way to try to achieve this. So a third-party control system that communicates with all of your subsystems using custom code that then talks to everything from the sensors to all the devices and then makes all those decisions for you. But once we get to a place where using either Matter or some other sort of standard communication protocol, what we're hopefully our end goal is that all of those sensors, all of those subsystems, and even your personal area network, your wearables, are all communicating with each other and creating actions, doing things in the home on themselves, by themselves, without having to have direct interaction from the user. That's going to be the most impactful thing, as what I mentioned earlier, as you walk into your home, which is extremely high tech, but you have no idea because you can't see it, you don't know where it is, and it doesn't really need a lot of your own interaction. But I've been working on it myself for over 2 decades, and the industry has been focused on how we can get to that stage, and you know, when that may happen. It's going to be a while, but we're all, I think what's really great is the general consumer is now aware of this and the opportunities and what technology it takes to get to that point, and that's pushing it further a lot faster than what we had been doing in the past.
Yeah, I think that DIY opportunity to be able to walk into a store, purchase something, put it in your home, use that as a ladder approach, right? For somebody who might be like, wow, this is really cool. I want to look at some other additional smart home technology, and then maybe have to find a professional installer to help them put that system together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, it's a lot of what we've talked about is health in the home. There's also what we call health at home, which is more of the digital diagnostic tools that people are using. But Michael, you kind of touched on this already. It seems like eventually there is going to be this convergence of health in the home and health at home. And a lot of what we've talked about is there's going to be this autonomy where you walk in, you don't even realize it. How long do you think it's going to take us to get there for consumers to be able to have that opportunity? And what's that going to look like?
So from what I see, this year is really crucial. I think there's going to be a lot of elements of that converging of both of those. Obviously going to take several years to get it to where we want, but the ultimate goal of this technology is to improve longevity and quality of life, right? So if you go to a doctor and you say you have a certain condition, if they just prescribe you something, you're probably better at switching doctors, right? But if your doctor says, oh, in your home, do you have pets? Or, do you have an air quality sensor? Or what, they try to probe to see what the underlying issue is, and then they try to guide you in that way. That's what this technology should do when it's all integrated and working together. So, oh, you improved your air quality, your blood pressure went down, and they can tie it together. So that's the value of what you invested in. And then it just evolves from there, right?
Yeah, I would add to that. I think what we've seen that's so different and unique of this year and a couple of the years previous is the empowerment of the consumer to take charge of knowing how the air quality and the water quality in their home, know their own wearable blood pressure cuffs, knowing their CO2, like there's never been a time like there is now that the consumer can have the diagnostic data, the tools to see their environment and their own personal health that's really pushing everything to the next level.
Awesome. And final question for both of you. So, I mean, you're working out of your RV for the last 14 months, and I'm sure you've been working from home.
Yeah.
What are your favorite remote work technology tools that you use?
I think we need another hour to speak about those things, but we talk about it all the time. But okay, so there's personal health, but the reason why we are so impacted by environmental health is because we've really been destroying the environment. Mm-hmm. It's coming back to haunt us, right? That's why we're talking about all this technology. So we're pretty similar. So in my home up in New York, I changed my oil tank to geothermal, so much more efficient, better, cleaner. I put up the Tesla solar tiles with the power wall for resiliency. I have all my air and water quality systems, so I know all the ranges, and I automate it for optimal zones. So CO2 under 600, all these things that the general consumer doesn't understand. So instead of talking a different language, it's all about green, yellow, red. That's really how people want to perceive what the quality of their environmental factors are, right? So
that's so smart.
Yeah.
So they have a green, a yellow, and a red indicator to know good, not good.
But at the same time, if they're keen on studying something and they want to know specifics, they can still go into the dashboard and know exactly within green where it is, within yellow where it is, right?
Awesome. Yeah. I know just hearing you speak about it, I have a lot of room for improvement in my own remote work.
We'll talk about it after.
And Ian, how about you?
I have actually working with Michael. I've got an air monitoring. Even in my RV, I monitor my air. I'm working on figuring out ways to balance out the humidity, getting fresh air in, making sure it's filtered. I also have a multi-stage water filtration system. And then as far as my work, I said earlier, for me, my release is turn things off. I take the dog for multiple walks. I get out into nature, and that's how I am able to kind of disconnect and have a healthy workplace. But, I also work for an amazing organization where, we have really great collaboration. We use some software to help with that. And we're all still working through what that looks like as far as virtual and hybrid work environments. But it's there's plenty of technology out there, and there's great companies like Michael with RePure to help guide you if you're not quite sure.
Yes. Well, thank you both for joining us today. This has been very informational, very helpful. Thank all of you for joining us, and we hope that you have a great afternoon.